Hi guys, welcome to Talent Management Week 1, and today we're going to be talking about recruitment and selection. So here goes, I hope. Right, okay, before we get on to that, just quickly, you should by now have read the articles that I posted on talent management, but just in case you haven't, to recap quickly, talent management is really about getting the best from your people at every level. Okay, and so what you're going to do in talent management is you're going to look to attract the best people, the most well-skilled people for your organization. And then once you've attracted them, once you've managed to recruit them, then you have to put in place ways that you can maintain that relationship with them. So you have to put in training, that you have to do succession planning. So how are they going to move up the ladder in your environment? All sorts of things. How am I going to compensate and pay them and motivate them to keep working well and be the best that they can? And ultimately, when people do leave your organization, is how is that termination process going to go through so that they still have a good feeling about your organization, your company, and that they will continue to promote your organization post leaving it. Okay, the stages of talent management process, basically what I've been saying, it's finding or sourcing the right type of a talent, attracting them and recruiting them to your organization, and then training and developing them so that they will stay on or be retained. And ultimately, hopefully, you can promote them. And with that comes competency mapping and performance management. So that's where you have a clear idea of what skill set you need to have developed in order to move to the next position, the higher up position from you. And that all forms part of career planning and ultimately succession planning. And sometimes with succession planning, we need to leave an organization to join another organization to get the next role up. Okay, so when searching for talent, one needs to change the way one goes about recruiting and think about, does this person fit the role in the company? Does this person fit the company as a whole? And how is she or he going to grow in the future? Okay, so which brings us on to the very important part of Unit 1, recruitment and selection. And I cannot emphasize it enough, you really need to understand these two definitions, okay? So recruitment is the process of identifying and attracting people to work for your organization. So it's the first part that goes into hiring somebody. It's all the thought analysis that goes into it. And selection is when you have managed to attract them enough to be interested in your company and you bring them in for interviews and that sort of thing. And then eventually you choose that one particular person to be hired. So that's selection. You must know the difference between the two. Okay, it's very important. Okay, so every organization will have its own specific recruitment and selection policy. And in that policy, as you know from having studied policies earlier, will be your procedure in detail. How do we as an organization go about identifying what roles we need to fill and the type of people we need to fill those roles. Okay, you will see in your formative assessment, you're going to read a recruitment and selection policy, and that's, you'll see it's all about guiding you through the process so that you always do recruiting and selection in a methodical way to identify the best person for your organization. Okay, obviously, as with everything, policies are governed by the law in the land. So you've got the Labour Relations Act, the Employment Equity Act, and the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. And all of those sort of regulate how and who you can employ and how you should always be fair to people and not discriminate on things like age and sex and that sort of thing. All right, but you need to read up on those and know those ones yourselves. Okay, important to know the following. Okay, you need to know, what does the recruitment process involve? What does the selection process involve? Okay, it is in your textbook. You need to learn these processes. Okay, so here we go. Remember always that recruitment is about identifying and attracting the right people to work for you. Okay, whereas selection is about the interviewing and choosing the right person from that pool of applicants that you've managed to develop in your recruitment phase. Okay, here is the basic recruitment and selection process. Okay, as I say, you need to be able to know what these steps are. So this is, if I was you, I would go and draw this up into your notes and put an NB there as something to learn for exams. Okay, so your first step is going to be to do something called a job analysis. We'll talk about job analysis in a moment, but it's basically where you gather all the information on that job so that you've got all the correct information so that you can go on to the next step, which is to advertise the position that you've got available. Then you receive all the applications and you can invite those people, the ones that you like, to your interview process. Okay, so you will have applied a selection criteria to them. You'll say, like when I was working in HR in London, I worked for a company where one of our processes was how intelligent people were. They needed to be intelligent to become consultants. And so we used to have this thing about if we were screening people who'd come out of university, we used to look at their school results before we looked at their university results, and you had to have got 2 A's and a B. Okay, in the UK, you write a thing called A level, so you write 3 subjects, not like we do with the 7 subjects here in South Africa. But you had to have got 2 A's and a B in order to have passed the first selection criteria. If you'd got 2 B's and an A, you were instantly turned down. They weren't interested in hiring you. So that's what a selection criteria is. Okay, once you've drawn and once you've got that little list together, you can identify your shortlisted candidates. Tell those who are not, who didn't make it, that you're sorry, they haven't made it, and then you invite that shortlist of candidates for interviews, right? And this is your selection process. Where you conduct your interviews, you give them any tests or case studies or whatever the process is that you need. And from that, you whittle it all down and you select your candidate. You have to tell other people you've interviewed, that they haven't made it for the job. It's the polite thing to do, so it requires a phone call or a letter. Then with the candidate that you have selected, you make them an offer of employment, you draft them a contract, and you invite them to an induction program. And we'll discuss induction programs later in the program. Right, key principles to consider when recruiting and selecting. These are very important to always bear in mind when you're recruiting, and it links back to your policy. Okay, you need to be equitable. You must give everybody a fair chance. So it means that you must interview people in the same way. You must apply the same set of criteria for going through their CVs, that sort of thing. You must be objective and suitable for the purpose for which it's intended. So you must make sure that you are hiring with the right intentions for the right job. Transparent, the process and basis for decisions must be clear and open to scrutiny. Otherwise, people can come back to you and say, you didn't hire me because you think I'm too old for the job, or you didn't hire me because I'm a woman and you think women can't do your job. So you must be able to justify everything that you've decided. Deserving, this selection is made on the basis of merit and without discrimination. So you are hiring, goes back to being fair and equitable. You're not hiring your best friend's boyfriend. You're only hiring him if he is the right person for the job. And lastly, you must keep everything private and confidential. Okay, the information that people submit to you is their personal information, and it is your responsibility to keep it confidential. Right. I said we would talk about a job analysis. This is the first stage that happens in the recruitment process. And you, as an HR professional, will go off to a department and say, okay, explain to me what the job is that we're needing to hire from. And you must look at the specific job, not at the person who's occupying that job at the moment. You must look at the specific job and say, what must this person be able to do? What are the things that they have to achieve in the course of their job, and what type of person must they be. Okay, so you do a full review of it all, and from there you generate two documents. First one is a job description. Okay, that's what the job needs to be done, how and where. A job title, a job location, what the working conditions are like, what the job duties are, what machinery might need to be used, and what type of hazards might be faced in that job. Okay, so that's the job description. It describes what that person's going to do. The job specification describes the type of person that you need to perform that job. So what qualifications do they need? What type of skills do they need? You know, somebody who's a plumber can do different things to somebody who's an electrician, to different things to the person who is an anesthetist in a hospital. Okay, so you need to look at the level of responsibilities and the type of emotional characteristics that somebody might need for that job. Okay, so it's very important to understand job analysis produces two documents, a job description and a job specification. Okay, a job description, as it says, defines the roles and responsibilities and duties to be performed in a job position. Okay, and it's what you use to advertise and attract candidates. Job specification does the set of skills or attributes required in a candidate to perform the job. And then lastly, the thing that you can develop is a job summary, which really outlines the requirements of the job, the list of knowledge, skills, and abilities of the position. So you kind of combine the two, the job description and the job specification, to perform this. Okay, guys, that is it.